Hi, storytellers. I'm excited to chat today with bestselling author Ethan Jones. Ethan writes the popular Justin Hall spy thriller series, the Carrie Chronicles spy thrillers, and the Jennifer Morgan romantic suspense series. And he does all this on top of working the many long hours as a lawyer in Edmonton, Alberta. And welcome, Ethan. It's just so great to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have a useful conversation for your readers.
Awesome. Do you mind just starting off just sharing your story, kind of what inspired you to start writing fiction? Maybe there was other authors who inspired you, or and then did you start traditionally self-publishing, or kind of what was the process there?
Sure. Thanks for the questions. Those are really good questions to get us started. So I always wanted to write. It was just finding the time and finding the know-how and learning how to actually go about doing it. It's probably something that a lot of people want to do. The saying goes, everyone has a book in them. It's
Yes.
just how do you actually get it out. So I just recently, the last 7 8 years, I've been blessed with having more time and more ability to put this passion to the paper, so to speak. So I started about that time, 7 8 9 years ago. I tried the traditional publish route, and this was in 2008. So the industry was in decline, in a sense, all the global meltdown of that time. So it wasn't the best time for a reader, for a writer to approach the traditional publisher. So I got some positive replies from them, but nothing, no contract or any offers of any sort. So then a friend of mine who had published independently made the suggestion. So I started to look at the industry. 5 years ago, it was still in the infancy stages, and that's what happened. I hit publish on the first book, and I've done so with the rest of my books, and keep doing it. In terms of inspiration, I've looked at other authors in the genre. So being having a background of a lawyer, I like legal thrillers. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to write some in the genre as well. But I also love the spy thriller genre, the famous authors that write or wrote in those series.
You write the Justin Hall spy thriller series, and the action-packed Carrie Chronicles, and you also write Jennifer Morgan romantic suspense series. So would you tell listeners about your Justin Hall series? So what made you, for instance, what made you decide to go with Canadian intelligence agent versus the usual? At least when I read books, I usually read about the CIA or the FBI or MI6. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's something that I didn't want to do, because I thought the fiction world didn't really need another CIA agent or FBI agent. There's plenty of them, and the other reason being that I'm a Canadian myself, and I know that we do have a great contribution that our country gives in the international arena. Of course, we don't know a lot of things that the security service does. By definition, we're not supposed to, otherwise they're not really doing their job. So there is, in the real life, there is a lot of operations that our security service does, that in a way I wanted to channel some of that. And the reaction from most of the readers, they go, I didn't really know that Canada had a security service, even though the one in my books, it's completely fictional, doesn't have anything to do with the real service we have. So I wanted to give readers something different, but the same. So the different being a Canadian character, a main hero that is different from the normal ones in the genre, but not very different, so that the readers would still find the character appealing, as well as his stories and his operations.
It gives a kind of a neat new twist on it, right?
Yeah. I was trying to make Justin a more human character. Like if you look at and I'm using more movies, but also books like James Bond or Jason Bourne are these characters that are really tough, and they don't really need anyone. They're self-sufficient, kind of one man against the world, and
Yeah.
they still will win. Justin he has some of those traits. Of course, he's a secret agent, so he needs to have that profile. But he also has his human side. So he has a lot that readers can sympathize with. And he also has Carrie as his partner. So it's more of a teamwork rather than Justin just doing everything on his own. So he has to rely a lot of times on Carrie for her support and guidance at times.
Yeah. Which kind of brings me to the next question. Like, you've also written the fast paced Carrie Chronicle thriller series. So, Carrie is from that Justin Hall series, right?
Correct. Correct. So she's a minor character in the Justin Hall series, and I felt that I needed to give readers a little bit more of her personality and her background and her storyline. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that within the Justin Hall series. So I started a spin-off when she was running solo missions, and Justin would make just a cameo appearance, so to speak. And one of the plot lines of Carrie's story is she's looking to find what happened to her father, which is kind of the guiding force for her to join the service. And it affects a lot of her personality, like what she likes and dislikes, what nationalities she trusts or she doesn't. So both those themes, I felt they were better handled if Carrie had her own series, which so far is two books, but my next book will be the third one in her series.
I love reading about, strong female protagonists, main characters. It's inspiring. So, which kind of brings up a question, actually. Do you have a way of knowing, this is just, I just thought of this now, but of knowing like what percentage of your readers are women and what percentage are men?
It is difficult to determine that percentage
Yeah.
of all readers. I ran a survey recently, and I was surprised with the results. Now, this is only 200 people that answered the survey, but
Yeah.
it seemed that over half of them are women,
Yeah.
and women in the 50 plus age group.
Yeah.
So that was surprising in the sense that whenever people think of the action, adventure, spy, thriller genre,
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to mind, being that the characters are male, is that also the readership will be male. But I found that the opposite is true, that there is a lot of female audience there that love to read, especially the age group that they have. In a sense, they have more time in
Yeah.
their hands, and
Yeah.
also they're refined. Like by the time that you're 50, you've seen and you've read a lot of the series, ongoing series, so you can be a little more pick and choosy with your time and your money.
Yeah. It's just a neat little aside. I was curious about that. Sort of continuing sort of your indie publishing journey. Did you find that it was pretty soon after you published your first book that you found a reading audience, or did that come like maybe after you'd had like 3, 4, 5 books published?
Well, the first book for me, and different authors have different experiences, but I think my experience from what I know about other authors is the most common one, that you don't really find a lot of success and a lot of readers with your first book. And there's many reasons for that. The first and foremost being that when you just finish your first work, it's like if you were doing your first baking or your first attempt at painting or anything creative, you're not at your best, and a lot of people don't know about your creation. So you just let your baby out in the world, and your baby is cute and all, but if people don't know about it, then it's difficult to attract them. A second reason would be some readers don't want to engage in a series until they have seen the author make a commitment to write 3, 4, or more books in the series. So I've seen some of that when I was writing, people were trying to kind of hang out and see whether there's going to be more books in the series before they're vested emotionally in following a hero's journey. The third thing would probably be as a writer or a new writer, you're not that business smart, so you may know how to write a great book, but there is a different set of skills that are necessary to market and promote the book that you've written. So it takes a little bit of skill to learn that, and of course a little bit of time to be able to reach the readers. So as a word of encouragement, don't stop writing after you finish the first book, and also don't let yourself be discouraged. My first book, when I released it, along with a couple of short stories that I had, I only sold 7 copies the first 10 or 15 days that the book was out. And then, as years go by, I can sell now a bad day would be seven books. Right, so it's that equation that if you keep at it, you'll get better. You'll have more books out, and you will engage more with your readers.
That's really helpful and encouraging, right? To keep writing, because it's going to show up. You just got to keep writing the books, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like any other activity that you want to achieve a goal, whether it's you want to run a marathon, or you want to visit every city in the United States, or visit any country in Europe. You can't do that all at once. You have to pace yourself, and you have to learn how to be wise about going about and reaching the goal, whatever the goal is, whether it's to write a book a year, or to sell 1,000 copies a month, whatever that goal that you've set up for yourself is.
Yeah, sort of continuing on with the different books that you have. You also have the Jennifer Morgan romantic suspense series, and that's I saw that it was written under E. Jones instead of Ethan Jones. So just a couple questions. What made you decide to write these books under the name E. Jones? And then, how is this series different than, the spy thrillers, for example?
Okay, so the first question about the E. Jones, two reasons to go with a different pen name there. The first one being that I wanted to make it clear for readers that this is a different book, so it's a different genre. The cover should make that clear. It's a woman, because the main character is Jennifer, of course. And also the second reason being that there seems to be the same idea that the spy thriller genre has more of a male readership. There is the idea that the romance or the romantic suspense has more of a female readership. And there is also a little bit of traditional wisdom that may not always be correct, that this readership prefers writers that are also female. So I went with a neutral letter there, E. Jones. So if you don't know who E is, it could be Emily, Emmanuel, Eleanor, any writer. So you don't have this bad feeling, so to speak, that I don't want to buy something from a male writer. What does he know about writing romantic suspense? If there is that thought, which may or may not be there. So just trying to eliminate any obstacles in getting the reader to check out a new author. In the sense of how this series is different, even though it's romantic suspense, it leans more toward the suspense than the romance. So there's more, maybe because I had written another 10 action thrillers, it was harder for me to stop doing that. So in the third book in the series, Jennifer actually has to deal with some Chinese spies. So as hard as I try not to include spying in her book series, it found a way to get in there. But the story has more emotion. I tried to write it more from since it's also on it's from the point of view of Jennifer, and it's also the first person point of view. So
Yes.
I think it has a closer connection to show her real feelings. And Jennifer is not Carrie or Justin. She is more of a person that you'd meet on the street, and you wouldn't necessarily give her a second look in the sense that she's completely normal, like you and I,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis Justin and Carrie, that they have their own personalities, battle-hardened and covert operatives.
Yeah, because there's actually quite a bit to think about, right? When you're starting a new, like a different sort of book, like if you go from spy thrillers to romantic suspense. It, so there might be some crossover, right, of audience, but you're probably going to attract a whole new, readers that specifically read romantic suspense, right?
Right. And when I first tried, I contacted my most loyal readers and told them what I was doing, and I got some shrugs and some kind of eye rolls, so to speak.
Okay.
I'm not sure about this, but I'll give it a try. And a lot of the people that tried, they were happily surprised. They're like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be like a girly book, but you did something pretty good there." So I'm happily pleased with that. And when it comes to marketing, I'm sure we'll probably talk about it later, but I try to keep separate the two readership so that there's no confusion, because really it's like going to a restaurant, right? You want to eat a steak, and then people bring you quinoa, right? There's nothing wrong with quinoa, but if you're looking for a steak, that's what you want.
Yeah, true. That's a good comparison, and that's important for, I guess, for readers. Which brings up actually a question. I just because I was just thinking of that. So, say for example, if someone had so if you wrote historical romance that had quite a bit of suspense, but then you wrote contemporary romance with not a lot of suspense, just more, romance, I guess, and contemporary. That would be two different readerships, right? Is that?
Well, you might be able to see some crossover because there is still romantic elements in both genres, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you would see some people that would continue to follow, especially if you have the same style and you have the same you hit the expectations of the genre, but also you still continue to give the readers what they liked in your previous series. And by that I mean, if you have let's say your characters have a trait that they like a humor trait, right?
Oh,
Or
okay.
you write a clear scenes that you can transfer from one genre to the other. Those two genres are unfamiliar with me, so I don't really know the conventions. But if
Yeah.
you hit all the conventions and you are able to keep the same style, so
Yeah.
going back to the example of cooking, you're still the same chef. You're just making two different meals, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're making pasta, you're using a different set of skills than if you're making let's say you're cooking fish or you're making lobster, right?
Yeah.
So even though those are different food groups or dishes, I guess they're still coming from the same source. So if you can give put all your expertise in those, I
Yeah.
think you'd be able to have some carry through with your audience.
now that you've written so many books, like how many have you written? It's like it's way over 10.
I'm
It's like where are you at now?
I'm working on the 15th.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. So that's quite a few books, I would say. Um, so, what is, now that you have sort of this process, would you just share what that is? Like, for instance, do you write beats, or do you create an outline before you begin, or maybe you're a pantser, like, maybe you just kind of start writing, or do you plan your characters and your scenes ahead of time? Like, I'm just curious, what your process is.
Sure, sure. It's my wife tells me that I do have the outline just in my mind. I don't have it like written on a piece of paper, like an Excel sheet with
Okay.
chapter one, chapter two, and everything. I'll use the example of the current book that I'm working on. I know the ending,
Yeah.
and being that it's part of a series, you know that the main character, spoiler alert, or not so much, the main character doesn't die.
Okay.
So you know that for sure that and knowing that I write spy thrillers, there is the climax scene. So I try to have that clear in my mind, and that's not just for the book, but that also serves for the cover, because I try to have the
Right.
cover reflect one of the major scenes or one of the major plot devices in the
Yes.
book. So the most recent book that I'm working on, it's called The Austrian Asset,
Yeah.
and the spur from that was knowing what's happening in Europe with the flood of refugees from Syria and from other countries,
Yeah.
and knowing some of the tensions, underlying tensions about whether there could be terrorists among them. How can
Yeah.
we tell? What do we do about it? So the idea that background spurred the book. So I started with the idea that what if there is an asset in Austria that is that the agencies believed he was giving them information to help them, but he actually wasn't exactly doing that. So that's the starting point. This asset disappears, and then Justin and Carrie are expected to find him and find the reason
Yeah.
what's going on, why he disappeared. So once I have the starting point,
Yeah.
the beginning I find a little bit harder to write because you're creating, you're kind of, us being in Canada is like
Yeah.
starting a trail in the snow, right?
Yeah.
Once you start, it's a little bit harder to, and then once you've kind of walked a little bit, then the characters are clearer. The action has started. So once a few clues have been discovered, then okay, so we know we're going to go to, let's say, Sweden to find out where this information we have led us.
Yeah.
And then we finish our job there, and we're led into another place to go about. So I don't really plot in the traditional sense of chapter one, this is what's going to happen. But I do know about beats, and I use them regularly. So pretty much the idea is every 10, 15 pages, something really, really good in the sense of moving the plot forward should happen. So you shouldn't have more than let's say a chapter or so that doesn't serve the purpose of moving the plot forward. So you can have flashbacks, you can have background information, you can put things there to slow down the pace, especially after chase scenes or action scenes. But everything in the book should serve to move the plot forward, even if the movement is inward. So you can have scenes about the characters showing indecision, like where are we going to go from this point? But at the end of the
Yeah.
chapter or at the end of the scene, a decision has been made on how to proceed.
You keep kind of most of that in your head.
I do I like to discover the
Yeah.
stories.
Oh,
So
okay.
I know so in the case of this book, I don't want to give a lot of the plot, but I knew at the beginning kind of where the midpoint would be,
Yeah.
kind of where the story would turn. I just didn't know how to get there. And
Yeah.
I know some of the major obstacles that are in the way,
Yeah.
but I'd like to discover how some of the smaller obstacle happens. So
Yeah.
it's I would say the most important thing is to know the ending, where are you going with the story?
Okay.
Like what is the point?
Yeah.
So what is the character gonna do? And kind of anything he can learn about this, and how is the whole story going to wrap up. So using the example of a previous book, or any storyline, the hero survives, he's learned something useful, and he has defeated the enemy, or the enemy has escaped, but that's a setup for the next book, where the hero is gonna go again after the arch enemy.
Yeah, it's great to know your process because I mean everybody sort of plots different or figures out their story I guess differently, but it's neat to know kind of what because there's going to be people listening that'll relate to your process, right? So I think that's great. So you are a very prolific author. You know, you said 15 books. That's a lot. So do you write in scheduled time blocks, or are there certain days of the week or the weekends that you devote to writing?
Sure. I'll start with the last part of the question. I don't write on the weekend or on a holiday like the family day that we have today. I try to leave that room for other activities, being with my family. Sunday is church day, so I don't do any writing on those. But what I found is the discipline of having a set time a day,
Yeah.
that you have scheduled for writing. So in my case, I commute to work, so I take the bus, and it's on a good day, it's about 40-minute one way. So I use that time to write. So I sit at the back of the bus, I turn on my laptop, and I can write for a good 30, 35, 40 minutes before I have to get off and go to work. And the same thing on the way home. So
Yeah.
if one used that period of time that they have, maybe their commute is not 40 minutes, but even if it's 15 to 20
Mm-hmm.
minutes, 30 minutes, you're probably familiar with the Pomodoro technique,
Yes.
25
Yeah.
minute in, 5 minute out. So or you can people if this doesn't work, then I would suggest people go to a cafe for 20, 25 minutes, and then do the same idea with the laptop, or anywhere else that they can carve out sometimes. So if you're waiting at the dentist, the doctors,
Yeah.
or any place that you have a seat that it's pretty much quiet around you, then you can get a little bit of work done. So I would say the consistency. So that you sometimes writing has this romantic idea that people sit around at home drinking coffee, kind of sitting by the window that has a lake view, and whenever the inspiration strikes, that's when they write. Or sometimes there are retreats that people go for 3 days in the cabins, trying to pour out their mind on the paper. And those things may work for some people. I found that they don't really work for me. I found that if I have a specific period of time, so I know this 40 minutes, I'm not going to do anything else. I don't have internet on the bus. I don't have a cell phone, so
Oh, okay.
nothing will really interrupt my concentration. And because it's every day at the same time, you can train your body and your brain easier. So every day at 7:15, between 7:15 and 8, this is the writing. It's a writing time.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that actually totally makes sense. The whole routine. That's kind of how we are as humans, right? It helps us.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever routine works for you. For some people, it may work that you take your lunch break. So 12 to 12:30 you eat, and then 12:30 to 1 you write.
Yeah.
Or if after you put the kids to bed, you write 9 to 10 before you go to bed yourself. Or in the morning, you write 5:30 to 6:30 before you head out. So whatever period of time you can carve out, as long as it's without interruption, so you're not doing other things during the same time, and as long as it's consistent. So the best way is to be at the same time every day, but if you can, then at least write every day.
Those are great tips to help people, new writers to learn how to be more consistent with their writing and stuff. So that's awesome. Uh, Sort of continuing along, but more toward the marketing end, I guess, of writing. Um, for those who are listening, are there specific things that you've done that have worked for you to let readers know about your books and build your author platform? Like, I don't know, like, do you offer free books, discounted books, like Facebook ads? Do you do that, or regular blog posts, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's those are some good questions there that we can hit. As mostly for authors starting up, but even for authors that have been doing this for a while, it's always a great idea to give a book for free to
Yeah.
lure in the reader, so to speak. Think from the point of view of the reader. If you heard about an author that is has a book out, but you don't know anything about him, you would be less likely to pay $2.99 or even 99 cents, let alone $4, $5, and more dollars
Yeah.
to try out. And the free book also works better if you do have other books, because the idea is that you give out the first book for free so that readers can move on and read the other books. So that wouldn't really work if you only have one book to give for free, if you only have one book. But in this case, you can still give a couple of chapters for free. So the idea of how when you go to the supermarket, they might give you a sample of something, a new product that they're trying. So you take a sample. You don't necessarily buy the item, although sometimes you may if you love the taste of the food they're offering. But the idea that you're introducing the reader, again, without any obstacle, without any barrier. Here are the first 3 chapters. If you like them, here's the link that you can buy. You can buy the book. Or sometimes I found useful flash sale. So you drop the price to, let's say, 99 cents. For a 3-day sale only. So everybody understands the notion of promotion, that this is a deal. It's only for a few days. So it works, the scarcity idea that, you have to act now to buy
Yeah.
this product. I've tried the Facebook ads, and I've tried Insta Freebie, which is a different system that you give books for free in exchange of a mailing list. So that also works, because then you create a base of fans, people that have given you permission to email them with your books. So you can use those things. Another way is if you have a couple of chapters that never made it in the book. So let's say deleted chapters, like deleted scenes. Those are really interesting, because that's something that readers cannot really get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So if you think about a book and you're giving it for free, readers can always go and buy it. But if you're giving them a deleted chapter or kind of behind the scenes, that's something that they have to let's say join your mailing list, or they can also try that and also feel special, because it's something that they can't get anywhere. So a couple of things that I'm doing with my last book: I'm giving away a deleted chapter if people buy the book within a certain period of time, and I'm also giving the story behind the book. So how did I go about writing this? And some people like that sort of thing. So at the end of the book, you find a couple of pages, if you're wondering, like, how did this story happen, that gives you a little bit about the background and some information that the idea that you're getting something bonus and something exclusive for being either for buying the book immediately, like on release date, or for joining my mailing list.
Because you have the two, especially I was thinking the Jennifer Morgan, because that's romantic suspense, right? And then you have the spy thrillers. Do you, with in terms of, I guess, crossover readers, how do you attract then Justin Hall readers then to your Jennifer Morgan romantic suspense series?
Well, that is tricky to do, and I haven't seen a lot of crossover, unfortunately, because it seems that my readership like the hot and fast action in Justin and Carrie series.
Yeah.
So I, in a sense, I had to start not really from scratch, but it is, and a word of caution: when people switch genres, there is a little bit of a little bit of starting from scratch
Oh,
there,
okay.
because you are losing some readers. So if, let's say, you have a following of 1,000 people on your spy thriller story, when you
Yeah.
are moving into the romantic suspense, you might start with 50 or 100 from this 1,000 group crowd that now is following you. However, that allows you to reach new readership, and it also helps you grow with your writing, because now you are writing. In my case, I was writing scenes that would never make it into a Justin Hall book, or if they did, there would be a shooting or an explosion at the end of the chapter. So, in that sense, it allows you to grow as a writer, but it also allows you to reach an audience that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to. But be prepared for a learning curve, so a steep learning curve at the first few months.
Yeah. So, what would be, I guess, what would be your top three action steps for, someone that's kind of a newer writer, like maybe they just finished their first book and they're working on their second or something. What would be sort of your three action steps for new writers to take today if they want to write a lot of books, and share their stories with a wider audience?
Sure, I'll start with a marketing or slash promotional tip there, and that would be to build your mailing list. When people hear the mailing list, it might scare them a little bit, or might give them some sort of misunderstanding of being salesy and trying to reach people that don't really want that sort of thing. But the idea is you let people know that you have a book out, and you don't have to even wait to have the book out before you start contacting people. So you can let your friends know that, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm working on a book. Would you be interested in knowing the progress of the book? And not all your friends are interested, will be interested in that, but some of them may be, and you can always ask them if they know others who may be interested. So you may not be the right person to read this book, but maybe you have your mom or your dad or your sister, your coworker, someone else that you know. So trying to get the word out about what you're doing, and whether you finish the first book or you're working on the first, it's never too early or too late to start making creating a following. And whether you're on social media, whichever you are, you can do the same thing. So you can, on your postings, on your updates, whatever they are, you can let people know what you're doing. Among other things that you share, you can do the 80-20, like once a week or twice a week. You can let people know. So that would be the first tip: get the word out about what you're doing. Because you will find people that have some interest in that. The second one, I mentioned a little bit earlier about the discipline in writing.
Yes.
A book might seem like a terrifying thing to do, but the cliche about Rome not being built in one day, a book was not written in one day. So in my case, and with most authors, with if you put a couple of hours a day, you can easily write about 1,000 words if you have kind of where the story is going and everything. So if you only wrote 20 days out of the month, you will be able to have the book in, let's say, 4, 5, 6 months. So with a little bit of discipline and determination, you could get a book out in 6 months, and that's to get you started. So don't let people tell you can't do this. You can definitely carve out an hour here and there a day to do this if this is really what you want to accomplish. And in the sense of a third thing, it would always be to write something that you're passionate about, and to learn about what you're writing, and to write in a series. So if you are it's harder for people to follow you in a standalone book,
Yes.
because you'll have because they don't really know what to expect. Also, from the point of view of the writer, it's harder because you have to create characters that that are not the same. And we were talking a little bit earlier offline about some authors. They, even though they have standalone books, the main character kind of feels like it's the same character, right? So
Yeah.
you when you write a series, you have one character, the world is created, people know about the character, they know it's like watching a TV show, the new season, right? Even though there's new stuff there,
Yeah.
you know what to expect. You have the main characters, and you can always bring in minor or major characters depending whom you kill off as you go.
And then one other question. I was just curious what the best piece of writing advice you've received or that you wished you would have received when you started writing your fiction.
I'm gonna go with a piece of advice that I wish I would have received was don't accept any limitations that people put on you. There was a time when I was writing 100, 200 words a day, and I was really happy with like a couple of paragraphs because, like a page is 300 words, right?
Yeah.
So if you're only writing 150, you've only done a couple of paragraphs. But sometimes the traditional wisdom is that it takes years to finish a book.
Oh, okay.
And like a book, it's not good if the author didn't put 5, 7, or 10 years. And the trick there to clear your mind is not how many years it takes to write the book, but it's how many hours it takes to write the book.
Yeah.
So of course, if I only write a day out of the month for half an hour, it's gonna take me a decade to do the book. But if I let's say in a perfect world, I could take 2 weeks off and I could write 8 hours a day. What stops me from having the book done at the end of those 2 weeks? Because when you think in the terms of hours, it's easier to actually figure out your own pace. So if you can write even let's say 500 words a day, then you are able to write the book as we calculated earlier in a year.
Yeah.
So there's really no reason for one to linger and to write unless your book is the size of War and Peace and deals with the same deep topics. But like a genre book. In a romantic suspense or a spy thriller, it's something that you can do, and you can do pretty well in a short period of time.
I'm gonna have to put that up as a little sign by the computer. I think that's encouraging. That's great. So would you just share with people that are listening, what kind of books you have on the go right now, and then also where can writers and readers find you online?
Sure. So I'm working on the 10th Justin Hall spy thriller, as I mentioned earlier. It's called The Austrian Asset. And even though I write the books in a series, they can be read as standalone. So it doesn't really matter where you start the series. The character continues. Of course, the best experience is if you start from book 1, which is Arctic War Game. But if readers want to start at book 9 or 10, they can still pick up and be able to follow. So that's the release date for that one. It's April 11. So most likely I will be able to release it before, but April 11, I'm giving myself space to breathe. And then I'm hoping to get the third book in the Carrie series out. So that's my next schedule, which should take me into the summer. And then I'll see what I'm doing. I'm trying to do an experimental thing. I'm starting a new series, or hoping to start a new series, but I want to see if there's a readership for that. So I've started a couple of campaigns on Patreon. I don't know if readers are familiar, but it's a platform when you can go and support a project that you hope the writer will do. So it's kind of like a pre-order / donation / support. So if that goes well, then I might start a new series if I find out that there is enough readers to support that project. Readers can find me online. My books are on all fine establishments that sell books online. I also have the books on print, so folks can go to Chapters in Canada or to Barnes and Noble, and they can either order them, or if they're carrying them, they can pick up a copy. I'm on Facebook as well, so author Ethan Jones. If you type that on Facebook, you should be able to find me, as well as on Twitter, author E Jones. And I also have a blog on Ethan Jones Books. So just type that on Google and you can find me. And the blog and the Facebook are more the social part of life. So if you want to see me walk my dog, or how much snow I've shoveled when we have the snowstorms, those are the couple of places to go. The Twitter is more the business side. So if you want to know more about my books or deals or promotions, you can do that, and you can also sign up for my mailing list to get some deleted chapters of works that I've worked, and some deals in the future.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ethan, for taking the time today to chat with us. It's just been so great to hear from you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.